Okay, Assalamualaikum everyone. Can we start?
Waalaikumsalam, Doctor. Yes.
Kesalahan doktor.
So everyone's not in yet. There's only like 30 people, but um, you know, when I'm giving lectures online, then probably I will not be able to allow people to join. Those who has not come in yet. So, if possible, any one of you, if you see someone requesting to go into this channel, then just allow. Okay. If because usually when I'm giving lectures, I'm not able to look at who's uh, requesting to join if they decided to join a little bit later. Okay, now that's the first thing. The second one is this is a 3-hour lecture, of course, but I think the content of my first lecture is not going to be the whole 3 hours. But what I wanted to ask of you is that, you know that next week we actually have a lecture on next Friday, a few days before Raya. So I was hoping that if I could finish this lecture, today's lecture early, then I would like to continue with the second lecture so that next Friday you would not have any lecture. Is that possible?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good.
Yes.
And also because next Friday I will be going to Taiwan. So if I were to give lecture, then I might actually have to give lecture somewhere in the airport. Okay. And then the third thing I wanted to explain is that um, this this class would actually have like 3 assignments. Only 3 assignments, so I will not be giving you a lot, and I will tell about all the assignments later on. So just please make sure that you do all the assignments, because based on your performances last semester, a lot of you did not get good grades because you did not do your assignments really well. So my plea is that do your assignment because they help. If one of you do not get a good grade, for example, then the only way I could actually help him or her is actually by increasing the marks of the assignments. I cannot change the marks of exams and exams and the quiz. So the only marks that I can change to improve grades are actually assignments. And usually, for example, if student A, if I add 3 or 4 marks for student A to increase his grade, then I would usually increase 3 or 4 marks for all the students. So when I improve a grade for one person, I usually improve the grade for everyone. Okay, unless after the improvement, after the addition of grade of marks, your grade remains the same, then I will not change. Okay, so please do your assignments. I'm pleading you because the first semester's result, a lot of students did not do well. But when we look at the marks, we found out that if they have done the assignments, they could actually at least increase 1 grade. Okay, so that's my plea. Do your assignments. Okay, now let's go to the lecture. Let me just share this first. Can you see this?
Yes,
Yes,
Doctor.
doktor.
Okay, good. Let me. Okay, so today we're going to look at introduction to behavior science and environmental psychology. I think you probably have looked at this in your proforma. Look at your proforma in UCANfolio. You'll see that I have uploaded the proforma, and this is the basic description of the course. For this part, what I wanted you to understand is that there's going to be 3 HPP or CLO, class learning objective. For the first part, there will be 30% marks from your test, And then for final exam, there's going to be 50%, and then 20% from your assignments. Okay. Okay. And this is also the topics that will go into mid-semester test and also the final exam. So please do not keep asking me, Doctor, which topics are going to be in the final exam? Doctor, which topic is going to be in the test? And this is it. Okay, I will not entertain any question asking what question or what topics are going to be in which exams or tests. Okay, so now this is your first assignment, and this is an individual assignment. So what I want you to do is do an environmental autobiography. So how you do it is actually you think of 5 places, um, any places that you have encountered in your life, and then discuss the environmental quality and aesthetics of of these places, and then how they have influenced you in your outlook for the environment. Meaning that, for example, you like going to Taman Negara, for example, because the air air quality is really good, it's more pleasant and stuff like that. So think of 5 places. It doesn't have to be good places. It could be bad places. For example, um, uh, you don't like Chowkit, for example, because too many rubbish, it's smelly and stuff like that. So think of 5, probably some that are good, some that are bad. Think of 5 places, and then discuss how they have influenced you in your environmental outlook. Okay, how they influence your decision so not influence you on how you look at the environment. Okay, too. So how this place have shaped you, who you are, and how you view the environment. Okay, too. And this year, actually starting last year, I want your assignment to be in video form. So as usual, do not upload your video in UKM Folio. Publish it somewhere. My suggestion is UKM Folio. But if you feel that you have other channels that I could actually look at, then upload somewhere else and then share the link. That's why, remember last semester I suggested that the whole class actually have a YouTube channel so that you can actually do this and then upload in your own YouTube channel and then just share the link. Or perhaps the whole class could actually have one Instagram um, account for the class itself, and then probably upload there. But the problem with Instagram, I think the length of the video would be very limited. Okay, so my suggestion, if you do have a YouTube account, then that would be really good. So upload there or upload any media account and then share the link with me in the UKM Folio. Do not share the video in UKM Folio because usually videos are really big. So I'm afraid that UKM Folio cannot really accept too much videos there. Okay, and then we have, this is the first assignment, and then this is the second assignment. Think of 2 places. Uh, um, and sorry, the assignment is called environmental appraisal. This is a bit different than the first one. It's similar but a bit different. The one is actually environmental autobiography on how these places have changed you, how have shaped you, how it has influenced you. But now you actually wanted to appraise the environment. So think of 2 places, one that you really, really enjoy and one that is you do not like. And then there must be a reason why you really enjoy the place and why you don't like the place. So in this assignment, also an individual, I want you to explain why you really like this place or why you don't like the other place. But I want you to make sure that when you do the environmental appraisal, just stick to the environment part. I know sometimes I like this place because this is where I had a really good bonding with my family and stuff like that. So I do not want that. Okay, I just want you to look around and how does the environment why do you like the place? Because of the environment and stuff like that, not because of emotional um um attachment. Okay, just how does the environment, how do you actually wanted appraise the environment? You like the environment, the place, because of the environment, not because it reminds me of father or mother or my family or boyfriend and stuff like that. Okay, so this is your second assignment. Okay, so these are first and second assignment are individual, and then the third assignment is actually behavior mapping in group. um so this is a group assignment. I would suggest you stick to the same group for your mini project last semester. Okay. So in these groups, so last semester you actually have 6 groups, right? 6 or 5?
6, Doctor.
6. So keep to that 6 group because probably that's a group that you enjoy. Uh, and then I want you to, as a group, select a public or semi-public areas, for example, KLCC or Chowkit or, Taman Botani or Taman Tugu and stuff like that. And then once you have selected the site, you draw a map of that area uh, as accurately as possible. It doesn't really have to be a perfect one. And then spend some time in that area. If possible, about 1 or 2 hours, just sitting there, and then make observation of how does people use that area. Okay, and then do it again. Also, you should do it at least twice in a group. So you would actually be getting like 2 maps. Okay, and then you develop a list of behavior that you observe, for example, reading or eating or throwing rubbish and stuff like that. And then in the map, you set as that designated symbol for each behavior. For example, if you have a triangle, then a black triangle, then probably that corresponds to eating, for example, or sitting. Okay, and then analyze these activities, and then how does environment support this behavior? For example, if you see overflowing rubbish bin in that area, and then probably you see that because the rubbish is not being collected regularly, then people tend to throw rubbish all over the place, for example. So how does the environment support behavior that you observe if the behavior is actually throwing rubbish without thinking? Okay, so again, uh, this is a group challenge, a group assignment, and at the end of the semester, there's going to be a presentation. So you as a group would actually be presenting your behavior map. Okay, example of behavioral map is something like this. There's many types. For example, this one, as I said, you can put designated logos or symbols that corresponds to each behavior. For example, this one, the blue line with blue dot is skateboarding. So in this area, people are skateboarding. And then in your discussion, you explain why people are skateboarding in this area, because probably it's a skateboard park, for example, kan? But if it's not a skateboard park, but people still skateboard, then why? Because probably the road is flat. Sorry, the path is flat and it's paved or something like that. Okay, you explain that as well. So these are examples of behavioral map. Okay, now let's go to our actual lecture. Okay, so what you're gonna learn in this semester are 2 parts, which is basically behavioral science. So this is a science that studies how human behave. Okay, and then later on we're gonna have a look at environmental psychology. All your assignments are actually on environmental psychology, on how the environment influences human psychology or human behavior, basically. Okay, so that's the gist of what behavioral science and environmental psychology means. Okay, now let's start with the behavioral science first. and we're going to look at human life cycle. And in this topic, I will be talking about at least four subtopics. One is theories of lifespan development. There are many theories, but I'm going to concentrate on a few. And then we're going to look at prenatal development and also birth and also newborn. And then this next stage is actually infancy and childhood. And then finally, we're going to look at adolescence and adulthood, in which you and me are actually in this stage. Okay, the first one is theories of lifespan development. Okay, there are many theories of lifespan developments. For example, there's social cultural theory, behavioral child development, attachment theory, cognitive development, and so on and so forth. But I will be talking only about a few. Three, Erikson theory of psychosocial development, Piaget's theory of cognitive development, and Freud's psychosocial development. And these are the most common theories that has been used and taught by psychologists. Okay, now let's look at the first one, Erikson theory of psychosocial development. In this theory, Erikson says that human lifespan are actually divided into various stages. Starts with infancy, and then early childhood, preschool, school age, adolescence, young adulthood, middle adulthood, and maturity. And each stage would actually have the challenges on what are the factors that influences behaviors of a child or of a person in this area. The stage one is called infancy, and the major conflict that infant would actually get is actually whether to trust or not to trust other people. Okay, so usually in the mind of this infant, the question would be, can I trust people? Of course, one of the first thing that the baby trusts is actually the parents. Okay, so if that is the case, then you will see there's no there's no conflict. But you know, some babies, they don't like strangers, other baby like strangers. So this is what's placed in their mind. Do I trust this person? Do I want to go into near this person or not? So that's a conflict. And usually how to resolve this conflict, how to gain trust is actually feeding. That's why parents are usually trusted very quickly, because they feed the child. Okay. And the basic virtue that an infant learn is actually hope. Because when they trust people, they hope that they will get fed. Okay, they will get food. So important event instill trust in the baby, and also and the baby actually hope that because of his trusting the parent, he will get fed. So so in each state, there's going to be what is the conflict, what is the major question that person are thinking of, and then what are the event that would actually enhance the interaction, and then what are the basic virtue that the person have in order to resolve the conflict. Okay, so trust is basic. For example, believing in caregivers, trusting that the world is safe, knowing that whatever needs you have will be met. For example, sleep, food, and everything. Okay, now stage two, actually early childhood. And the conflict would be autonomy versus shame and doubt. Okay, you see this in toddler usually, whether they have autonomy. A toddler with autonomy usually knows what they wanted to wear in the morning, for example, how they wanted to, what shoes they want, how they wanted to comb their hair, for example. Okay, and on the other hand, they will be shame about what they're wearing, about themselves, basically. Okay, or they will be ashamed because they cannot do and they cannot choose their own clothes. They cannot wear their own pants, for example, or tie their own shoelace, for example. Okay, so the conflict will be autonomy versus shame and doubt, and then the major question is, can I do this myself, or am I reliant on others? And of all the events that is happening in this stage, usually toilet training is one of the most important event, because usually uh, a toddler with a very good autonomy would actually be toilet trained. Okay, and then the basic virtue is the will meaning that the will to train yourself to go to the toilet, for example. So important tasks in psychosocial stage, for example, picking your own clothes, developing food preferences, choosing what toys you like, and also mastering toilet training. Okay, um, and starting from now, I'm gonna, go very briefly on the conflict, the major question, event, and basic virtues, because I think you probably understand it better. And then this is the preschool stage, and the conflict will be initiative versus guilt, and the major question will be, am I a good boy or a good girl, or am I a bad girl or bad boy? And then important event will be play, because this is when a student goes to preschool, for example, and then they started to develop connection with other people outside their family. And then the basic virtue was actually purpose. Okay. And then you go into the school age, the conflict would be whether you want to be industrious. Industry is not industry. Industry meaning, willing to do work, hardworking and stuff like that, versus inferiority. Okay. And the major question is not, am I good or bad, but how can I be good? Okay, can I be better than before? And then important events is basically going to school, and then basic virtue is actually competence. Next, adolescence. I think you guys probably have just gone out of adolescence, maybe still, but this is basically your conflict, whether you wanted to maintain a specific identity, or you are having a role confusion. So identity versus confusion. And your major question is, who am I? Am I a rocker? Am I a sentimental? Am I, Islamic, not Islamic, gang surau or something? This is when you started to align yourself to specific groups. And then the important event for this is actually your social relationship. Okay, if you identify yourself as a rocker, for example, then your social group tend to be people from the same rocker group, for example. And then basic virtue is fidelity, meaning that you are loyal to that specific group. Yeah. And then young adulthood. Probably most of you are already in this stage, adulthood, young adulthood. And your conflict would be intimacy versus isolation, whether you want to be intimate with other people, uh, or you actually wanted to distance yourself from other people. So your question, will I be loved or will I be alone? And then, of course, important event is a romantic relationship, and basic virtue is love. Okay. When you go to middle adulthood, the conflict will be generativity or stagnation. Whether you want to continue to generate good vibes to contribute to the world, or you want, I've done so much, I just wanted to stop, for example. So that will be the conflict. And then the major question is, how can I contribute to the world? Whether I want to contribute, or whether, no, let's not contribute. I'm too tired already, for example. And important events would be parenthood and work. And then basic virtue would be care. And then we have late adulthood. This is where I am actually at the moment, I think, early later, because I'm 56 this year. So the conflict would be either ego integrity or despair. And the major question, did I live a meaningful life? Have I done enough to make sure my life is happy or not? And then important events would probably be when I started to reflect back on life, look at the old albums and old photos and stuff like that. And the basic virtue that people of my age or in this stage would be wisdom. Okay, so that's the first theory. And then the second theory is actually Freud's theory of psychosexual development. Okay, so as the name suggests, this looks at how how psychology affect your sexual development. Okay, so again, there are a few stages. The first one is oral stage. It started from birth to 1 year. And erogenous zone is called mouth, where everything oral stage, because everything is from the mouth. If the baby wanted to eat, she will cry. Okay, everything that a baby try in this oral stage will be actually to put it in the mouth. So that's why it's called oral stage. And then the second stage is anal stage, 1 to 3 years old, erogenous zone. This is when a child started to have bladder and bowel control. And then phallic zone, a phallic stage from 3 to 6 years old. This is when you started to look at yourself and come up with, oh, I'm different from other people. I'm a boy, so I'm different from a girl. So you look, your erogenous zone is actually genital. And then uh, from 6 to puberty, latent stage. This is an extension of your phallic stage. You started to become very active, but your libido is still inactive. Libido is basically the drive to have sex. Okay, you do not have that drive yet, but you are still very you're not very clear about your sex, your gender and stuff like that. And then uh, late after that, and from puberty until you die, then would be genital stage. So you're beginning to have sexual interest with your friends, or the one that you like, or sexual interest with artists and stuff like that. So this is a genital stage. Okay. This is the explanation for that I've actually explained before. So I'll just skip this stage. You can read this slide later on. Okay. Now, next is the theory of cognitive development, and it's developed by a psychologist called Piaget. Okay. There are basically four uh, cognitive development stages. One is called sensory motor stage, and then from birth to about 2 years old, and then pre-operational stage at 7 until 7, and then concrete operational stage at 11 until 11, and finally formal operational stage. Okay. I think there's an example. Okay. Stage 1, children started to learn through trial and error. If they try some chili, then it's hot, so they do not want to eat chili anymore. Okay. In stage 2, it's called pre-operational, and then this is when children started to develop language, memory, intelligence, and so this is when they started to play around and make believe, or I'm a princess. I know my granddaughter at this age, don't call me Aisha, call me Princess Aisha, for example. So this is make believe play. And then stage 3, you started to go to school, and then started to develop your logical thinking. And then stage 4, you started to have hypotheses. You understand how the world works a lot better than before. Okay. So in the sensory motor stage, uh, a baby learns about the world through senses and actions, and then 2 to 7, they understand the world through language and mental images, and then from 7 to 12, they understand through logical thinking, and this is when they started to be able to categorize what is good, what is bad, what is square, so categorization started in this area, and then of course when you grow up, you understand the world through hypothetical thinking and scientific reasoning. Okay. These are stages in sensory motor. For example, there are reflexive stage, primary circular reaction, secondary circular reaction, coordinating secondary circular reaction, tertiary circular reaction, and also mental cognition. Within this stage, a baby would actually go through reflexive. For example, how to develop reflexes through breathing, and then connect reflexes with pleasurable feelings, and wanted to repeat the movement. And then started to focus on other objects, things outside their body. Before this, it's just about on their body. And then learn schema through observation. And for example, they say, if I do this, my mom will actually be angry. Or if I do this, things will fall down, for example. If I throw glass to the floor, then it will break, for example. So this is when, this is the coordinating secondary circular relation. But they don't understand why it break. It just say, when I do this, the glass will, if I push this, the glass will fall down, for example. They don't understand the concept of breaking in it yet. And then tertiary circular reaction, when tried out different variation of movement and schemes that they have learned. For example, I think the best way is actually laugh. Different types of laugh, a child would actually probably get a different reaction. So they're beginning to try different types of laugh or different types of movement. They started to dance a little bit, and they say, "Oh, if I've danced, my parents would be very happy." So they started to do it again, and then they started to uh, recognize symbol. For example, when they see a toy dog, they know this is a representation of a real dog. Okay, so that's a mental cognition. So this is the sensory motor stage. And then when the child goes into pre-operational stage, then you get they started to develop symbolic play and thought. Remember when I said they think they are princess, so they started to think that they're princess lah. So they started wearing clothes that resembles a princess, that they understand. If princesses is like this, then that's how they wanted to develop. I think a few years back, one of the biggest influence on pre-operational stage was actually the Disney movie, apa namanya? What is the movie that has a song Let It Go tu? You remember?
Frozen.
Yeah, Frozen. Kan? I think almost everywhere in Malaysia, little girl want to be Elsa. Okay, so this is in this pre-operational stage. Um, and if you look at the bottom photo, they started to understand that if you move, for example, if you move water into a smaller and longer container, they will not be at the same level. They don't know how yet, they don't know why yet, but they know, oh, it's going to be, they understand. If you put it in a taller, then the level will be higher than if you use a bigger container. Okay, and this is the stages or stages that a child would actually undergo during this stage. For example, seriation. They started to be able to arrange items in logical order. For example, according to color, for example, according to size, according to shape, and then started to able to classify stuff. Okay, they started to understand that sometimes some actions can be reversed. Okay, conservation. This is, for example, this is basically what the water into containers. They started to understand that the same volume, if you move into a different container, then the level will be different. But they don't know how yet. They just understand, oh, if you move this is what happened. They don't understand the concept yet, but they know it's happening. Decentering, a child probably, this is the stage where when there's a problem, a child begin to look at the problem from different angles as well. And then there's also a stage called transivity, or activity called transivity. They started to be able to compare shades, for example. For example, colors. They are red, of course, but there are different shades of reds. So they know different colors of red, even though they are all red. I mean, the parents say it's red, but then one is burgundy and probably one is a pink, for example. And then the formal operational stage is basically up until now. This is when a child started to hypothesize, to deduce results, and also to test hypothesis. If I I think in that stage, I was when I remember when I was really young, I was kind of naughty. So I think in this stage, my father actually have an aquarium filled with fish, for example. Um, in this stage, my hypothesis, well, my question is that what if I, you know, crack? What if I make sure? What if I remove water from the fish? What would happen? So this is when I learned about it. So I start to crack, the glass of the aquarium, and then started the water to flow. I already understand that if you crack the glass, then water would actually come out. So, and then I look at what happened to the fish. Oh, the fish cannot swim anymore, for example. Uh, and there's also an example again myself. Um, this is not a good example, but still, I wonder what would happen to kittens if I put it in a closed area. I actually have a sewing machine with all those lachi and stuff like that. Actually put all the kittens, all four kittens in that area. It turns out, oh, after a day they died. I actually killed kittens many times in my whole life. So that's me hypothesizing, deduction, and testing the hypothesis. Okay. Now let's look at the second topic: prenatal development and newborn. Before I go, do you have any questions? Do you understand the theories? Questions?
No, doctor.
No question. Understand, okay? Okay. Let's look at prenatal development and newborn. I think you probably have learned this a little bit in your anatomy and physiology class. So I will go very quickly. Okay. Uh, so you know about embryogenesis and development on embryos. I will not go through this because I'm not an embryologist or anatomist. But in prenatal development involved this. So it's basically physiological and anatomical development. And then, of course, there are factors that changes a child. I mean, that makes a child different from others. For example, genetic factors. Uh, uh, so a child with phenylketonuria, or a child with sickle cell anemia, a Down syndrome child, these are as a result of genetic factors. But there's also other factor that influences prenatal development. For example, if the mother drinks alcohol, for example, then the child probably will get fetal alcohol syndrome. Okay. Or if the mother does not take rubella shots, then probably the child will be affected by rubella. Okay. So these are factors that affect prenatal development. Okay, and this factor is not during prenatal development, but also the early stage of pregnancy as well. Okay, um, and then after the child is born, then there's major motor development. Okay, so these are the milestones that a child would actually go through um, during their motor development. For example, in at the age of 1 month, usually a child are able to roll over or grasp or hold a rattle, for example. And then in 6 months, sits without support, and so on and so forth. But you also have to remember that this is just a guideline. Some child, they go this major motor development a little bit slower than before. It doesn't mean that they're not following the good milestones. Sometimes they're a little bit slower. Some child are actually very quick. Okay, so give it time. So there's like a plus minus of duration. For example, for a month, 1 month, up to 2 months, for example. Okay, yeah. Okay, and then in this in this motor development milestones, this is when cultural differences or culture started to influence a baby or a child, for example, because culture are imparted by the parents. For example, a parent of certain culture probably eat some different things, so they started to feed the child with food that is similar to their culture. So the child would actually be influenced by this culture, for example. Okay, so some of the factors, cultural factors that could actually influence a child is actually breastfeeding, because in some culture breastfeeding lasted until like 2 years or 3 years. In some cultures it's just 1 year, and then so it that would actually influence development. And then hygiene of the culture, nutritional practices, and co-sleeping, whether the students are given so not the students, the child are given is his or her own room, or they just co-sleeping with other people as well. So those are actually cultural influences as well. Okay, now, so that's prenatal development and newborn. And then when a child grow up, then they started to go into infancy and childhood. And this is a stage, uh, this is a time where a lot of things are happening to a child. I would say this is the time when child started to learn a lot more than before. For example, they started to be able to have perceptions, and started to develop intelligence. They started to develop communication and language acquisition. Okay, and it's not just the communication is not just a verbal or it's not just through language or written language, but it's also through mimics, facial expressions and stuff like that. And then started to develop physical and motor development. Boys tend to be very rough, girls tend to be very girly, for example. Again, this is very cultural also, influenced by culture from the previous stage. They started to have memories. They started to remember, oh, when I was in uh, last month, when we went to the zoo, for example, then they understand, oh, when we went to the zoo last month, we saw this. I like that very much. So memory and thinking. And then, of course, social, cultural, and emotional development. Okay. So for each of these components, this is the explanation. Uh, a child started to become habituated to repeated stimulus. For example, they are beginning aware. If you hold the child, uh, initially the child will be startled. Or for example, if you make the startle, then probably the child will be startled. But if you do it repeatedly, then the child started to become habituated. They understand, oh, this is play, or this is not punishment, for example. And then by 7 months, they can discriminate sounds relevant to language production. This is when they started to mix sounds, and sounds started to resemble word. For example, mama or da, for example. Okay, and then there's also visual perception. They started to see actual distinguished colors at about 1 month, and all the other two. And then, but of course, when we talk about recognizing voices, usually a child are able to recognize mother's voice and language within a few days after birth. Okay, and of course, taste. They started to show preference to sweet taste, and this is why in some cultures they do not feed sweet things to baby early in the in development, because they don't want the child to be not really addicted, to be accustomed to sweet. Um, I I have a friend, I think in one of the Pacific Island countries, where most I think majority of the people are very fit, very lean. When I ask them why, because there's also other Pacific Island countries where they are really, really fat, but this group are very fit. And ask why, because they said we only allow children to eat sweet things after 3 or 4 years. Okay, so and the, when you're so used of food without sugar, for example, then you understand, and they try to avoid it as much as possible. Okay, and then there's also the milestones for communication and language acquisition. For example, from 3 months to 1 year, the baby would actually just start babbling, and then produce short words, short phrases. You started using better grammar, and then at 5 years and above, you begin to have a basic rules of language. Uh, you probably don't know what is verb, what is object and subject, but you are making proper sentences, for example, after 5 years. Okay. And then, of course, physical and motor development, double in weight, head, and then growth of different parts of the body are different. For example, head grows at slower rate than the rest of the body. And then there's memory and thinking. For example, starting with you only remember like 2 or 3 chunks of information until you are beginning to aware of your own cognitive processes, meaning, you know, if I do this, this is going to happen. Okay, cause and effect. So that's cognitive processes as well. Okay, and of course, as I said, social, cultural, emotional development. Usually by the age of 2, they begin to become very independent from family, and they wanted to play more because they want to learn about how other people react. Um, you know, play is very important in social, cultural development and emotional development in a child. And all these activities are usually culturally bound. Culturally bound. Okay, two. And then finally, adolescence and adulthood. Okay, this is when you're beginning to see some significant physical development and some identity development, especially in adolescent and young adult. Okay, you probably have learned this in anatomy, physical development on how females and males develop very differently. And then uh, this is basically a scheme for identity development. If there's a crisis is very important, okay? Because when you have a crisis and you are committed to resolve that crisis, usually you have identity achievement. But if you do not have crisis, but you have the commitment, this is called identity foreclosure. You just accept what other people say, or you just accept values. Okay, you don't really question the values. But if you started to have, if you have a crisis in your life, whether you want to steal or you do not want to steal, and then but your commitment to maintain your good self, so you decided you don't want to steal. Okay, so this is when you get an identity achievement. Okay, if you have been forced by your family, do not steal, without you understanding what is the consequences of stealing, then you will not be a stealer, you will not be a thief, but uh, you don't really have a good reason why you don't steal. Okay, so if you have crisis but you do not have commitment, it's called identity moratorium. And then if you do not have both, then you have identity diffusion. So absence of struggle, not obvious concern, and you don't care about all the all cause and effects, consequences. And these are some of the physical changes that occurs in adulthood. For example, skin changes in skin, elasticity of skin. Your body started to change as well. Your muscle mass change. If you grow older, then there's problem with joints. That maximum cardiac output might, your ability to breathe, ability to withstand oxygen level in the body might change as you grow older. There's gonna be a lot of hormonal changes, nervous changes, vision changes. Uh, I started wearing spectacles at the age of 48. Uh, Before this, I was okay. So as I grow old, then I begin to need prescription glasses. I mean, but there's also some people who actually requires have vision problem very early in the development, and then started to have hearing changes, probably loss of hearings and stuff like that, and loss of balance. This I can attest that I'm beginning to experience this. Sometimes, when I'm standing in the bathroom, for example, then suddenly I become giddy and loss of balance as well. I think that goes with aging as well. And then there's also changes in cognition. For example, uh, the older you get, the more time probably you need to solve problems, for example, or think about problems, and you probably get poor. Your memory has become a little bit poorer than before. But then some other cognitive functions has actually preserved. If you notice, older people tend to have a very good language, wisdom and stuff like that. So those are actually preserved. Usually the anything that requires speed or that would be changes, reduction. Okay, so older adults tend to have wisdom and practicality. Uh, change, changes in ability to make complex decision, uh, declines in memory, uh, cognitive deficit. Once you go after 65, you do not any cognitive deficits would actually occurs until you age 65. So you have, if you have Alzheimer's before age 65, that will continue. But after 65, usually they do not change a lot. Okay, as you grow old, there's a plateau, and then although adult also show cognitive plasticity, meaning they could actually change their cognition based on situation, understanding of an area. That's why that contributes to wisdom. That's why a lot of people, when they wanted to, if you want to ask for opinions, ask for advice, you go to older people, because of this plasticity, they are able to come up with different solution to one problem. Okay, two. And then, of course, there are other issues associated with adulthood. The first one is midlife crisis. Okay, usually at the age of 40 to 50, and then successful aging, whether you want to have a successful aging or not. And this is very important. That's why our faculty, if you notice, we actually have H-Care. H-Care is a pusat pengajian, is a center of excellence in our faculty, H-Care. Uh, the chair is actually Dr. Arimi from Biomed. So H-Care deals with aging, healthy aging, for example. Okay, so because this issue is very important, that's why H-Care has been developed. And then, of course, later on, we look at death and dying, which is the ultimate issues associated with adulthood as well. I think this is the last slide. Questions? Any question?
No, Doctor.
Okay. Let's take about a 5 minutes break before we go to the next lecture. Okay. Sorry, Diana. I just accepted your. So you just missed one class, eh? Tak apa. Did anyone record? Press recording? Did anyone press recording? Ada. Okay, it's recorded. So later on you can have a look at it. I will try to save the recording and then share it in UKM Folio. Let's have a 5 minute break. How many peoples we have? 37. Who else are not in? Total you have what? 39, right? 40, 39?
39, Doctor.
39. So two more people. Tapi yang tak ada, who's not in? Zong tak ada eh? Zong. Is anyone sharing a laptop? But you're at kampung kan? So Zong is not in, eh? Okay, have you asked? Can you ask? So we'll start again at 9. Okay, I'm back. So there's 38 people, so still one person lah tak ada. Zong is not in, right? It's okay. Let's continue with the next topic. Eh, So can you see the slide?
Yes, doctor.
Okay, good. Let's start. Okay, so the next topic will be learning behavior and behavioral change. Um, and this is basically what will be covered in this lecture. You learn about what is behavioralism and learning, and then types of behavioral learning, and then the differences, types of conditioning, the three types of conditionings and learning, which is classical conditioning, operant conditioning, and also observational learning. And then there are some uh, theories about how you change a behavior. And then there's also trans-theoretical model about how to change your behavior. This is especially true if you, for example, if you want to stop a behavior, for example, smoking. If you want to stop smoking, then usually people will actually try to use trans-theoretical stage of changes model. Okay, let's have a look at what is learning, for example. Learning is a process that leads to change, which occurs as a result of experience. So that is learning. But of course, there are many types of learning. When you go to school, it's also a learning. But behavior learning is actually any types of learning that changes your behavior. Okay, and this behavior is observable. Okay, so behaviorism or behavior psychology also is also called behavioral learning theory. Uh, it's a theory of learning that says that all behaviors are acquired through conditioning. So what is a conditioning? It's actually a process of training or accustoming a person or animal, if you want to train an animal, to behave in a certain way and to accept certain circumstances. Okay, so that is learning. And usually it's done by interaction with the environment. Environment here meaning that anything outside the person itself. So we use the word conditioning. And there are three major types of behavioral learning. One is called classical conditioning, okay, operant conditioning, and also observational learning. And we all learn through all three of these major types of behavioral learning. Okay, let's have a look at the first one. The first one is called classical conditioning, and it's also called Pavlovian conditioning, or have you heard about Pavlov experiment? Pernah dengar tak? Have you heard or learned or read somewhere?
Tak pernah.
Tak pernah dengar? Okay, tak apa, it's okay. So, classical conditioning are basically unconscious or automatic learning. And this is actually discovered by Pavlov. Pavlov is a Russian psychologist, Ivan Pavlov. So Ivan Pavlov come up with an experiment. Okay, let me see if tak ada pula gambar. Okay, this one here. Yeah, these photos below. Usually, when a dog, in a Pavlov experiment, a dog are given food. Usually, when the dog sees the food, the dog started to salivate. The saliva started to go out, and then there also a bell, and the dog are actually exposed to bell and doesn't uh, make the dog salivate. It's just a bell. But every time Pavlov give food to the dog and ring the bell, okay, well, initially the dog salivate because of the food. But after a while, they found out that even though if there's no food, but you just ring the bell, the dog will salivate because the dog started to associate sound of bell with food. So this is classical conditioning. Okay, and that is actually what Ivan Pavlov do in his research. So what is classical conditioning? Unconscious and automatic learning through association between unconditioned stimulus and a neutral stimulus. So there are a few terminologies that you need to understand. Okay, the first one is unconditioned stimulus. For example, if it's cold, then you started to shiver. You do not learn to shiver when it's cold. It's physiological. Okay, so that is unconditioned stimulus. And then there's also a neutral stimulus. If you see beach ball, for example, it doesn't do anything to you. Okay, but then there's also stimulus, which is what we call is conditioned stimulus. This stimulus initially was neutral, it doesn't affect anything, but because of certain experiences, now it triggers a response. If you see the photo in this, what do you think this photo tells about? This is an example of conditioned stimulus. Foto yang tengah-tengah ni. What do you think happened here? Any idea? Teka je. Okay. Kalau tak boleh teka tak apa. So this is basically my hand. And this drain cover at my bathroom. So initially it's just a neutral stimulus because it doesn't do anything. Okay. But I had an incident where I fell down in my bathroom and then cut my wrist by the edges of this cover. I'm not sure if you noticed, but my right hand is actually, I'm a disabled person sebenarnya. If you, because my right hand is not functioning very well. My two fingers, the smaller and the second smaller fingers, are not working well. Actually, if you notice, I never eat with my hand. I always use a fork and spoon because I cannot use my hand to eat. So this is conditioned stimulus. So before the incident, whenever I see this, it doesn't evoke anything. But now every time I go into a toilet and see this kind, especially this kind of drain cover, I started to shiver a little bit, afraid. Okay, not shiver because of cold, shiver because of afraid. So that is conditioned stimulus. Okay, so these three parts are stimulus. One is unconditioned stimulus. You do not learn. Okay, this one is neutral stimulus. It doesn't occur anyone. And then the last one is conditioned stimulus, which actually initially it was a neutral stimulus, but it became a conditioned stimulus. Okay, two. And then what are the response? For example, response to unconditioned stimulus is called unconditioned response. For example, as I said just now, when a dog sees the food, it start to salivate, or you know, if you're so this unconditioned, or when the stimulus is cool, then you started to shiver. So the cold is unconditioned stimulus, the shiver is unconditioned response. Okay, and then there's the conditioned response. This is basically what I told before. The sound of the bell is basically neutral stimulus. It doesn't cause any response. But when you do something like the experiment now, the bell, there's neutral stimulus become a conditioned stimulus, and then when a conditioned stimulus would actually lead to conditioned response by the dog or by a person, for example. Okay, now, so what is classical conditioning? You learn through association of neutral stimulus with a biologically potent stimulus. Okay. Next, the next one is operant conditioning. Okay. This is also referred to as instrumental conditioning. You know, where a behavior is developed through either rewards or punishment. Okay, parents usually employ this a lot. Okay, if you shout, for example, kena rotan, you get a smack by the cane, for example, or if you steal, then you know your parents would actually you know hit your hand or scold you, for example. Or if you do well, then parents will give you chocolate or food or praise you, for example. So those are rewards and punishment. And this, if you done from early in the childhood, then this would actually develop learning, okay, through through a process called operant conditioning. Okay, and then again, there's a few terminologies that you wanted to understand before you understand the operant condition. The first one is respondent behavior. These are behavior that automatically and reflexively. For example, when you touch a hot stove, you quickly remove it from the stove. So that is respondent behavior. Operant behavior is as a result of operant conditioning is something uh, is beyond conscious, but it occurs spontaneously as well. So it's almost like respondent behavior, but this is through learning. Okay, and then so those are behavior. So respondent behavior is like a normal physiological behavior, and then operant behavior is physiological behavior, but that has been trained through operant conditioning. Like salivating is normal, is respondent behavior when you see food. But after conditioning, you hear bell that is associated with food, then you start to salivate. Okay, so that is no longer a respondent behavior because it became an operant behavior. And then there's also reinforcer and also punishment. Reinforcer is something that makes you want to do that behavior. Punishment is something that makes you want to not do the behavior. And reinforcer are divided into two. One is favorable events or one is positive reinforcer, and then one is negative reinforcer. For example, if you do well and then you get a bonus or you get a present, that is positive reinforcer. Okay. Negative reinforcer, meaning that, for example, uh, you live in a hot room, for example. But if you do good, then your family would actually remove the hot room and then give you a better room, for example. So that is negative reinforcer, removal of an unfavorable event or outcomes. Another example for negative reinforcer is that if you do well in your assignment, for example, then I will remove tests. So this negative reinforcer. It still reinforces, but it's negatively done, meaning that students see tests as unfavorable. You don't like tests, for example. But as I said, if you do your assignment really well, then I will not do the test. Okay. So that is still reinforcing for you to do well. Okay. So this is just example. It's not really I'm saying for this course I'm going to remove the test. Yeah? No. Okay. In fact, tests are actually really good for you. Usually for tests you get really good marks. Okay. So and then for positive punishment is basically punishment lah. So if a child misbehave, you hit the child or you spank the child. So this is positive punishment. And then negative punishment, again, macam negative reinforcement, but in a negative version. For example, if a child do bad, then you remove something that the child like. For example, I don't know. If you do bad, I will not give you ice cream for today, for after dessert. So you remove that. So that is negative punishment. So these are the 6 terminology that I hope you understand whenever I explain that later on. Okay. And again, this type of conditioning or operant conditioning started when Skinner is another psychologist, do an experiment with pigeon and also with a rat. So what happened is that, for example, positive reinforcement, if the rat press the lever, press this macam button lah, okay, food will come out. So now Skinner has actually conditioned the rat so that if you do this, and this is considered as good behavior, you will get food. Okay, so that's positive reinforcement. There's also a different set of experiment where the rat was actually put in not in a not favorable situation. For example, there are electric shocks, but when the rat push the button, the electric shock stops. Okay, so that is negative reinforcement that creates this one, operant behavior, good operant behavior. Okay, the same goes, but of course Skinner started with pigeon, and then afterward he started to study on rat as well. Okay, and that's how you get operant conditioning. Okay, so reinforcement can be divided into two: primary reinforcement, which is unconditioned. For example, food, water, air, sex, sleep, and everything. Then conditioned reinforcement, stimulus that is being rewarded by other stimulus. For example, when you train a dog, you praise and the dog with food, for example. Then the dog would actually respond to your praise as well as something favorable because it's usually done with the food as well. Okay, or for example, sometimes if you notice some dog owners, they actually have that whistle. Kan? So whenever or if you go for animal show in zoos, usually the keeper actually have whistles. So whenever they do something good, the keeper would actually blow the whistle, and then the whale or the dolphin would actually come, and then they feed food. So this is a reinforcement of good behavior. This is called a secondary reinforcement. Okay, and then there's also positive and negative reinforcement. I've been talking about this before. Adding something to increase response, such as praising or giving present to student who turns in all the homework, or remove something. As I said just now, if I remove test, okay, then you will do better as well, for example. And then you can do reinforcement in different schedules. For example, you can do continuous reinforcement, meaning that every time a response occurs, you give the reinforcement. Or you can do fixed ratio schedules. For example, you do good thing for certain hours, then only or certain number of times, then only you get a reward. Or you do a fixed interval schedule. You only give rewards after certain time has elapsed. Or variable ratio schedules, after a varied numbers of responses. Mungkin, for example, mungkin initially if you do 10 repetitions, you get a reward, and then the next one, if you do 5 repetitions, you get reward, for example. So variable ratio schedules, the number changes a little bit. And then variable interval, initially if you do this for 10 minutes, then you get a reward, and then after that, if you do 5 minutes, you get a reward. So it's basically like these two, the fixed interval and fixed ratio schedules, but now they change it to a variable ratio schedules and variable interval. Okay, now these are example of operant conditioning. I think you can read this, but I can explain one or two. For example, after performing in a theater play, you receive applause from the audience. Okay, so applause act as a positive reinforcement. Okay, and then there are examples of negative reinforcement. Again, I've been telling you the same examples. If you do well in your assignments, if you come to class, then I will cancel tests, for example. So this is negative reinforcement. And there's also example about punishment as well. Positive punishment, okay, and also negative punishment. You can read the examples. Okay, again, Punishment can also be divided into positive and negative punishment. Punishment by application, positive punishment. If you hit a child, that is punishment by application. But if you remove something from a child, that is punishment by removal. Okay, so that's negative and positive punishment. Okay, now there's also the third type of conditioning or learning, which is called observational learning. So usually, there are also times when a child, especially a developing person, learn about a behavior by watching other people. Okay, most commonly by their parents. So they learn by watching other people. This is an example. Of course, I think this is too simplistic lah. These two ladies went to a Chinese restaurant. They were given chopstick. They don't know how to use the chopstick. So they observe other people using the chopstick and they say, oh, this is how you do it. Although I don't believe you learn to use chopstick in just one day. Yeah. This is a very simplistic explanation of observational learning. You learn through watching and replicating others. Okay. And there are stages in observational learning. First one is attention. Okay, you pay attention to behaviors by other people, and you retain that intention, that behavior in your mind, and then you try to reproduce that behavior. You started to learn, and then and you need to have motivation to continue doing the behavior. For example, the chopstick. Probably initially you try and that it doesn't really work. But if you have motivation, then you will continue to learn how to use the chopstick. But if you not have the motivation, then you will not develop the ability to use the chopstick, for example. So in order for observational learning to work, you need to go through these 4 stages. Okay. Now let's have a look at behavior change. How we can change a behavior. Is about altering habits and behaviors for the long term. What we usually, when you are asked to change your behavior, for example, in a health setting, for example, you want to stop smoking, or you want to change people from to stop smoking, for example, you want them to do it for a long term. Then you do not want them to stop smoking for a few days and then start smoking again. Even you, for example, I wanted to wake up early in the morning, earlier than before. So you need to change it, and you want to change it for the long term. So that's considered a behavior change. Okay. So there's a model which is called the trans-theoretical model or stage of change model on how you can actually do that. Okay. Because changes occurs gradually. Therefore, this model says that you need to do after a period of time, after a period of repetition, before this become a behavior. Okay, there are 6 stages. One is pre-contemplation, and then contemplation, preparation, action, maintenance, and sometimes relapse. Sometimes after this you give up and then you stop, or if you give up and then there's termination. If you do not give up, then you continue with the behavior. Okay, for example, this is a very simplistic explanation on each of the stage. Pre-contemplation, individual does not have intention to change their behavior yet. Okay, you're still smoking, for example, and then probably after your bosses or some regulations, and you started, oh, smoking is too much for me because it costs a lot of money to buy cigarettes now. So now, maybe I should change. Maybe I should stop smoking. So that is already in this stage, the contemplation. You intend to change the behavior within the 6 months. So I want to change it. Hopefully within 5 or 6 months, I will stop smoking, for example. And then you start to prepare yourself. Within the next month, what are you going to do? Because usually don't like, oh, I want to stop smoking, and then you just stop smoking. Usually people don't do that, and it doesn't really work if you go Turkey. So you say, oh, maybe I'll just prepare myself a little bit on the steps to stop smoking, for example. And then after the preparation, then you continue with the action, the actual change of behavior. And then if it lasts 6 months, and after that, now you're beginning to see, do I want to continue with it? So if you want to continue, this is maintenance. Or if you said, no lah, I give up lah, I cannot, I think smoking is nice for me, then you stop. This is where relapse occurs. Okay, and then termination. Termination could actually be in two ways. One is negative termination, where you stop everything at maintenance, and then you just go back to smoking. And then it could also be a positive termination, meaning that you terminate the old behavior. Now, because you already have a new behavior, which is not smoking, you have terminated the old behavior, which is smoking. Okay, so if you want to prescribe change to a community, for example, if you work as environmental health officers in the future, for example, then you say, I want to instill cleanliness behavior in the community, then try to do it based on this theory, following all these stages. Okay, so what's this? Oh, that's the end of the lecture. Any question? So this topic is not so heavy and not so much. Any questions? Any questions? Tidur ke makan ke ni? There's a chat. For filtering. Oh, okay. Any questions? Tak ada siapa punya. We lost one student already. Tak ada. Okay, if there's no question, do you have any question about the assignment?
Doctor.
Yeah.
Due date assignment?
At the end of the semester. Saya
Okay.
my assignment, I always give you chance a lot of time to send your assignment. End of semester, before the study week. Before paling tidak pun before your exam week lah. Because I know your senior last time, he sent his assignment after the exam, and I cannot give marks to those. Okay, so at least send it before study week lah, so I get the chance to mark everything. Ada yang I've already bring your grades to be endorsed by the faculty, dah masuk dalam sistem, just waiting for the release date to the student. And then the student, actually your senior lah ni, actually contacted me, doctor, I forgot to send the assignment, can I send you to now? I said, I'm sorry, there's no point of you sending assignment now, because I've already sent the grades to the faculty. Okay, so end of semester, everything is end of the semester. But you remember the assignment 3, the group work, there's going to be a slot, I think in week either 13 or 14, where you will need to present by group. Okay, any other questions? So there's only 3 assignments. So this time I do not give you a lot of, only 3 assignments, and 2 of these are actually individual video. Share the link with me, and then the third one is presentation. Okay. I hope you enjoyed this course, because for me, even though I'm an ecologist, I'm not a behavior science or a psychologist, but when I started to learn to teach this, I think psychology is a very interesting, behavior science at least, is a very interesting concept. And I noticed that I have actually been using some of the concepts in behavior science in teaching, for example. So I hope you'll find this course very interesting. It's very different than other environmental health or other subjects that you learn. So this is quite different. Okay. If there's no more question, then I think that's it. We finish class early, so you can rest a little bit, and then I'll see you this afternoon. Kan? We actually have another class for water quality. Betul kan?
Betul.
Okay. So I'll see you after this afternoon, and enjoy the rest of your Ramadan and Hari Raya later on. Okay. So next week, Friday, we do not have any class. Okay. That's it. Thank you so much. Assalamualaikum and a very good morning.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Doktor.
Thank you, Doktor.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Doctor.
Welcome.